The media strategy of non-state armed groups has had a long and varied history. From the beginning, states and empires have often had a technological advantage over non-state actors. The costs of media creation through the printing press, the radio, and the television denied non-state actors an opportunity to produce their own message. This led insurgent groups to adopt new strategies that sought to shape this message.
Initially, communications infrastructure was often the physical target of insurgent attacks. Such a strategy was normally employed by guerrilla groups during colonisation and World War I. The tactical advantage states gained from telegraph poles, telephone lines, and radio stations could be easily destroyed by insurgents. Ultimately, this strategy transformed from destruction to exploitation of communication mediums. Insurgents began to recognise the use of the media as a weapon to reach their own political objectives. This was seen with insurgents purposely seeking to stage and amplify events to affect Western public opinion. Examples include the Vietnam Tet Offensive, the parading of dead American soldiers in the Somali Civil War, and the 9/11 terror attacks. The Tet Offensive, though being an immense strategic defeat on the ground, was viewed as a resounding success in eroding the domestic political will that ultimately led to the withdrawal of US forces. Early on, insurgents recognised the importance of the media war. This emphasis has been furthered in organisations like Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda and ISIS. These groups have integrated media strategies so deep within their organisational structure that they have become inseparable to the strategic war on the ground. This has resulted in a level of PR sophistication unlike anything that has come before it, with many videos employing graphics, professional editing, and engaging narratives to great effect. In this time, states still tended to view the media war as separate, often leading to tunnel vision that focused upon material power on the ground, as was seen detrimentally in the US invasion of Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan.
As a consequence of Web 2.0 and mobile phones, new media has come to permeate every aspect of life. This heteropolar landscape has equalised the asymmetry that originally existed between states and non-state actors. This has caused insurgents to adapt their strategies to reflect the omnipresence of the media today. Insurgents have created an adaptable platform that can directly reach multiple audiences by subverting traditional media outlets that may have distorted extremist messages.
Insurgent groups like ISIS use this platform to spread radical views and glorify violence. Such strategies have a number of effects that aid ISIS in waging the strategic war on the ground. ISIS has been able to create propaganda content that helps to erode US political will, recruit foreign fighters, and spread tactical knowledge. Today, anyone can aid insurgencies by becoming a content creator or sharer of extremist views. The centerpiece of ISIS strategy is based on the glorification of violence. Images of beheadings, scorching of prisoners, suicide bombings, and destruction of artifacts are all staged for political effect. It is not the act itself that has any relevance to the material fight on the ground. Rather, it is glorification of the act that is designed to elicit certain outcome from specific target groups, frequently glorifying atrocities, inciting fear among opponents, local population, and Western audiences. In turn, this discourages local resistance and saps state political will. An example of this effect was seen by Jordan's speedy withdrawal after the burning death of a national. This strategy also has a wide local impact by creating a climate of instability that compels locals to accept ISIS as the only form of protection. Images of atrocities challenge the legitimacy of intervening forces that are responsible for security.
Given the state and non-state actors' attempt to mediatise war, serious questions have been raised concerning the ethics of these strategies. It is evident that non-state actors' presentation of the truth, as dangerous as it may be, should not be met with the false image of war as propagated by states. This can be illustrated by current US strategies in the fight against ISIS, where distortion of the truth is ineffective and undemocratic.
US strategies of sanitizing war are generally ineffective due to the diffuse nature of the heteropolar media landscape. Prior to this transformation, content was largely centrally produced by insurgents. This exposed the media apparatus of insurgent groups to physical attack and suppression, a problem frequently encountered by Al-Qaeda. Now the production of extremist propaganda is largely decentralized, rendering US strategies ineffective. Anyone with an internet connection or mobile phone can access or even share images of ISIS brutality irrespective of these strategies. It could be conceded that strategies centered on sanitized war have found effect with the US public and have been aided by oligopolization. However, the strategy lacks utility in the Middle East, which is the decisive battleground of public opinion that directly influences the outcome of the conflict. It could then be argued that this leaves states with no other option but to employ more effective tactics in response to the instantaneous nature and effectiveness of ISIS's media strategy. More extreme measures could come in the form of actively encouraging censorship of reporting and the internet. This would be a drastic departure from the truth, which would be counterintuitive by further eroding the remaining legitimacy the US holds in the region. The US should move focus away from sanitization to legitimacy. This legitimacy is contingent upon providing security on the ground, challenging ISIS's mediatized narrative of insecurity. This would require a comprehensive counterinsurgency strategy that would deny ISIS the opportunity to portray themselves as the only legitimate source of security, especially in the eyes of Sunnis. It is evident that the ineffectiveness of sanitizing war, especially compared to other opinions, illustrates why this strategy is ineffective.
Tactics centered on cleansing war cannot be justified in a democratic system of governance. The US has sought to defend domestic political will by employing strategies that create an interactive and entertaining reality of war. This attacks the basis of democracy that is contingent upon having an informed and dissenting public. This is also in contradiction to the supposed principles that underwrote the US intervention into Afghanistan and Iraq.
Misdirecting the public away from policy discussions makes domestic audiences more prone to commit to war and less critical of the means by which war is waged. Hypothetically, an extension of this approach could be seen with the application of ethical and legal standards to mediatized war. How this would be implemented remains questionable, especially if this most likely means censoring ISIS atrocities. The way to undercut the effect of these atrocities is not to censor them, but rather to appreciate democratic principles by rationalizing these acts with policy discussions. Making war interactive merely makes citizens more prone to accepting a climate of insecurity, which is the intended consequence of ISIS's media strategy. We see policy makers add to this narrative of insecurity by rhetorically amplifying the vague and general threat posed by terrorism. Though this is arguably to securitize the public against attack, it does so at the cost of basic freedoms. Destroying the basis of our very society to allegedly save it seems illogical. As opposed to taking a defensive approach to terrorism, Western states must embrace fundamental democratic principles by engaging the public in rational policy discussions. Whether policies can be devised to allow for a fair representation of war while preventing the use of fear as a weapon remains to be seen. For the time being, it appears that the ineffectiveness and undemocratic nature of US media strategy is in need of change.